Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
Mark Morowitz, you're here in live in person after traveling up north a lot and taking care of your clients as a CPA. I bet, because you've known your clients for so long, I bet they feed you when you go there. They, especially an older woman, right? Sit down, let me give you something to eat.
They try. They a lot of them do. They feel sorry for me, but
they feel sorry for you. But of course, during the holidays, everybody's got food coming out of their, the refrigerator. Sure. So, the thing that you love so much, though, and in your article that's coming up in our May issue, is you like to help people. You like to make sure that that they are getting the very best, because when you're dealing with financial issues, it's always tough to get them to open up, isn't it? I mean, your long-time clients, that's not a problem, but new clients, I don't know what they're afraid of. But
well, first of all, it took me a long time to accept the fact that I like to help people. People that like to help people tend to go out of their way to do things. They go above and beyond, typically, and sometimes people look at us and say, you're crazy, you do too much, you don't get paid for it. Anyway, that's what I do, and I'm okay with it at this point in my life. But it's difficult for people, no matter how long they've been a client, to open up when they have problems. But you can tell when you know somebody well, something's wrong. So either you can walk away and say, okay, I won't bother you, or you kind of push them a little bit and they open up to you eventually.
I just heard a story of a couple who've been married, I think probably 40 years, and they decided to get a divorce. And each person got their own set of lawyers, accountants, to make sure that everything got split up properly, because there are tax consequences. Have you ever been involved in anything like that?
I have. Personally and on the outside, absolutely. Things have gotten a little bit less complicated. Alimony is no longer tax deductible to anybody who got divorced after January 1st of this year. Maybe it was last year. I'm losing track of years. January of 18, that's it. So the hard part now comes, how do you even out property settlements to account for the fact that somebody's not getting support or alimony? I wouldn't want to be part of that on either side, but that brings in a different complication then, and that's why lawyers get paid.
It's interesting you should mention that. I don't often talk about personal situations, but my husband, who was married for a long time, and he paid his wife a lot of money, alimony. Fortunately, in a way, she never paid the taxes on it when she's supposed to have, right? And then she went after, not knowing that, but then she went after him for a lot of other things. And finally, he forced her to settle, not knowing that was a problem. So at the end, what he gave her was going to take care of all the money she owed. And so it worked out for us, because she owed probably about $100,000 in alimony taxes. So you're saying now, because I'm not involved in anything like this anymore, you're saying that anybody who has had alimony, they still have alimony if it's in their doctrine, in their paperwork, but they just can't deduct it.
They can. Anybody who had a divorce agreement before January 1st, 2018 is grandfathered. Still gets to deduct, and the other person the recipient has to claim it as income. So, but anybody new after January 1, 2018, no deduction, no taxability.
So who does that favor?
I don't know. When you do, typically the person that paid the alimony was the higher earner, had a higher tax bracket, got better, paid a higher, got a bigger deduction than the person who was receiving the alimony paid in tax. So it worked out better for both people, except when you're dealing with the really super rich, then now that's a disaster. So
Why
property.
so?
Well, because the when you pay out $1 million a year in alimony, it's still the highest tax bracket, as if so nobody wants to pay $1 million and not get a tax break for it. So
How do they?
Well, they still will, but they're going to try to get back money on the property side. So you try to work things out equitably, not always fair or not always equal, but equitable, so that it makes sense for both parties to settle.
So why did they make that change?
Probably for the reason I just mentioned. In most cases, the person paying the alimony gets a higher tax deduction, saves more in tax than the person who receives the money pays in tax. So they save some tax dollars that way.
I see. So somebody
Just revenue.
interesting
Yeah.
that came out. Well,
Balance the budget, it's called.
yeah, balance the budget. So do you have clients who are going to get a divorce, and do you consult with them, or is that with a lawyer?
It's interesting. I used to have designation, a certified divorce financial analyst.
Oh, you did?
I
There is
did.
such a
I
thing.
did. There is, and I marketed it for. I did a number of marital cases, assisting lawyers in the financial end, because they don't really know what they're doing financially. But it added credibility to what I did as a CPA, and but it was difficult to market. You had to spend most of your time doing that. All right, and what a lot of people got involved in that for was to get business as a financial advisor later on. They wanted the investment commissions from that. That wasn't my thing. I was a charged by the hour kind of guy, and there just wasn't enough in it for that. So I don't know of any clients that I have right now that are going to get divorced. I don't know. I try to keep everybody together as much as I can, but you never know.
And what happens, and I have found with older couples, they've just been hanging on, and they really didn't want to be married to one another, and something triggers it. And they decide, even after 40, 50 years, I mean, they actually get a divorce, where I would think they could just move out and live separately, but
it's hard. It's it's. Do you look at your life one day? I know I speak from experience. You look at your life one day and you say, I'm not really happy, and I don't really know what happiness is. And the best thing you could do is communicate. You've been married to somebody I was married for 30 years. You've been married. You talk to your spouse and say, I'm not really happy. How about you? No, I'm not really happy either. Well, what's going to make you happy? Maybe you can figure this out, because what happens over time, people stop talking to one another. They stop communicating. Kids come, you have kids, you're busy with sports and travel and all kinds of stuff, and the next thing you know, the kids are out of the house. You don't know how to communicate. So you forget what makes the other person happy. And I found that sometimes works, and you can save your marriage by learning how to communicate again. It takes a lot of hard work, and if you're interested, when you get into your 50s and 60s, that you can't do the same things you used to do in your 30s, and so sometimes it's best to stay married, but you have to be happy at the same time. And if you don't see that happiness coming with the person you're with, life is short. And you have to assess your situation. Of course, if there's property involved, then you've got a whole nother situation.
so sure, because I know a couple of people like this, that there's a lot of money in one of the spouses, and she knows that she's going to have to give 50% to the other person. So she's just thinking, we don't have to get divorced. There's nobody I'm looking to get married for, and we just live separate, as much as a separate life.
I knew people that were married for a long time. The husband thought that if he got divorced, he'd have to give his wife everything, and his wife thought that if she got divorced, she wouldn't get anything, and so they stayed married miserably. They each hoped the other one would die, at the next day, and it was really a horrible thing. And I looked at that and I said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be like that. And I don't ever want to hope my wife is going to die. That just doesn't make any sense. So you try what you can, and you know, you hope you find what you're looking for.
Yeah, well, we have a lot of people listening to this.
Good.
Maybe they're, maybe they've got something going. It's interesting that you should share that. See, I actually had a 43-year idyllic marriage. It was fabulous, but I had been married before 18 years. And I would say, don't you know, though, things aren't good, and it's not all of a sudden, bingo, I don't like my marriage, I want to get out. So what is it that all of a sudden you just put up with things? How does you put up?
You know, in my case, speaking from my experience, my kids were growing up. They were all involved in sports, and until they got out of high school and went to college, that's basically what your life's all about. You accept it. You go out, you have dinner on, and you watch TV. One person watches in the living room, the other person watches in the bed. You start to live your separate lives, and what happens when the kids are gone?
Yeah.
There's no football games to go to anymore, and there's no kids to make sure they do their homework. So that's when
the empty nest is really real.
The empty nest syndrome is very real, and if people don't provide, and I found typically husbands, I can't say everybody, but typically husbands found things to do. They had hobbies, they had more friends, they were able to play golf on the weekends or poker or whatever it was that they did. And the wives took care of the mothers took care of the kids, and they made dinner, and they didn't have as much time to go out and nurture a group of friends. So when the kids were gone, the fathers had an easier time dealing with the empty nest syndrome than the mother. Now the mother nobody needs her anymore. Okay? The kids are gone, they don't need mommy. And the husband, he figured out how to do it all by himself, and she doesn't want to cook anymore, and he doesn't want to go out to dinner every night. So it's one of those things, and I know I sound like a psychiatrist, but which
you've seen this.
I do practice. I just don't prescribe medication. Okay? I've seen it a lot, and it's I think it's something that if people, and I try to tell all my young clients, and the kids of my older clients and my sons and their friends, it's a lot of work being married. It's and if you find the right person, you'll enjoy doing the work, because when you put the time in and you do the work, it's fruitful at the end. And two people have to grow and be adults, and there's a lot of people that don't act like adults as they get older, and they put their kids in the middle of their arguments, and it just makes for a tough, difficult life, and I wish that it didn't happen, but that's what life's all about. So here's what it is. You take two people that typically come from totally different backgrounds, and you say, you're going to spend the rest of your life together. Okay? Now think about this. There's only two species on Earth that actually spend the rest of their lives together. It's humans, and there's, I think, birds.
There's some animal, okay? Right? Yeah.
And who's you don't have divorce issues in all the other species, right? They go their separate way when it's time to go. They're put on this earth to raise the young, and then the young get put out, and everybody goes their separate way. What's right and what's wrong? I don't know. But it's very difficult when two people come from a different background, that expect different things. And let's face it, when you're young and in love, you don't really think about this stuff. Your brain that says, "Oh, I'm in love with this woman," and then the bloom comes off the rose after a certain amount of time, and you don't know how to deal with it. And in the generation before mine, my parents' generation was told by their parents, "You'll deal with it." That's what people do. Everybody has a hard time. You deal with it, you stay married, and that's it. And it's kind of weaning itself away from that through my generation, and then the next generation, my kids' generation, they don't get married as young as we did, and a lot of them don't want kids. They see how difficult it is, and maybe they'll stay married longer because of that. Maybe it'll be all about them.
Well,
That could be a
you
good
are
thing.
quite a philosopher. I'm listening to all
I am
this.
a philosopher.
Well,
yes,
let me
that's
just say though that in many instances, my grandmother, I had two grandmothers. One grandmother lost her husband. He passed away, probably in his 60s, and she never married again. My other grandmother, her husband passed away, and she wound up getting married three more times. It's interesting, and they died, and not that she got divorced. They died.
Well, I would have been, after she was a widow twice, I might have wanted to stay away from her. But, that's just me.
I think she cooked
That's
well.
just me.
I think there was something there that
there were a lot of women back then. It was one and done, okay,
Yeah.
and a lot of women had what I call a martyr syndrome. They would be in charge of everything. They didn't need a man in their life, But it might help. You might feel better. You might enjoy it. You might have a smile on your face. I don't need a smile on my face, and that's what I saw a lot.
Oh, you do. You have seen a lot of things. I guess I come from a very different perspective. I see lots of joyful things happening to friends who've now been divorced and now finding new people, and so. But everything takes its toll. But I think financially, in fact, I was going to write an article for the next month, not May, about when you find a new person and you're over 65, and there's certain issues, the kids, but financial is an issue. So tell me, if you had a client and your client decides to remarry, what would you tell that client to do with any of the assets that she or he has?
Well, if it was at all practical and they had kids, I would say that they should talk about it at first and say, I want to put these assets away from my kids, and vice versa, and you shouldn't have an issue with that. There are ways around, if you buy a house together, or if one person owns the house and you're married, you can have life estates, through your estate plan, because it brings up a host of issues with grown kids when parents remarry when they get older. They're not insurmountable. It's all about discussing it and providing for it, and if it can work, it's great. It works.
And so that's what you would share with your clients, how to do this.
Absolutely. I mean, you have to know. I mean, they have to be honest with you up front and tell you exactly what they have and tell you what they want to do with it. Okay. For instance, I had a client. She was divorced, I think, and her kids were late teens, and she got remarried to a man who had lost his wife. And he bought a house and didn't put her name on the deed, and she was angry. And I said to her, I said, look, he wants to protect his kids, all right? I don't know that they talked about it much before. I said, but so here's what you do. If it's his house, then he pays for the house. You take the money that you would have paid for rent, that you were paying for, or for your condo, and you put that in the bank, so that if anything happens in your marriage 5-10 years from now, you've got $12,000 a year socked away, and you just provide for it. So it's not like anybody's trying to hurt anybody. It's just that we're protective of what we have. We don't know how this is going to work out. It's a second marriage. Okay, what happens if it doesn't work? I don't want you taking my money again. But talk about it. There's nothing wrong with it. People don't have to have joint bank accounts. People can have separate assets and separate bank accounts. It's okay. And I find that those are the people that get along the best. That they come without expectations. They say, you know what, I'll have mine. You can have yours. We'll enjoy it together. And life goes on.
Dan Verity, who just got out of the hospital, as a matter of fact, actually is listening. He says, welcome back to the show.
Feel better, Dan.
Yeah, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be back in Florida, by the way.
Yeah,
it was miserable.
Isn't it?
It was.
The weather was bad?
The weather was actually pretty nice. It was warm, but I was working from 4 a.m. till 9 o'clock at night for 2.5 weeks straight, and it was brutal. So I'm happy to be back and trying to hopefully make a shift in the way I approach my tax season from here on out.
So let's make sure that people call you. I want to make sure that everyone has your phone number to call you to really get you, to get you on the phone and to have you deal with them, because you are one nice person, I will say that. And
Thank
so
you.
we're going to keep your cell phone, though, which is 609-338-3603, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so we'll do that again. It's 609-338-3603, and his name is Mark Morowitz, Morowitz, and he is a CPA, but you can see from the show he's so much more. He is he's a very interesting, kind, thoughtful, smart guy, and so people who need someone like this, I mean, when they talk about the tax season coming up, and you don't want to stop at these places, where they have these little places you go in to get them to do your income taxes. No, you don't want to do that.
No.
Because they're just people who are just a rubber stamp of something. You want to get someone who not only will do your taxes, but will analyze what's happening. Why are you doing this? Or did you think about doing that, right? Is that what you do?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know now is the time, after 2 weeks after the season's over, that I start getting phone calls and texts from people. Why is this only like this and this only like this? And now is the time that people want to, they finally read their tax return after 2 or 3 weeks after they get it, and they want to say, go over, why did I only get a deduction for this, and blah 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 blah.
And how do you, though, as an expert, keep up with all these new tax rules? I don't know how anyone could do that.
That's why they call it practice. See, I've been practicing for 43 years, and you keep practicing to get better at it. I have to take 40 hours a year of continuing education.
40 hours.
40 hours per year.
In a classroom, or can you do it online?
Well, I'm doing May 8th and 9th. I'll be doing a online. Florida State University is having their annual, semi-annual thing for 2 days up in Tallahassee, and I'll just be watching it online and getting credit for being there for watching it. So. But you take different courses. Hopefully you take the courses that interest you, and tax-wise, we have throughout the year we have different things. I started with the new tax laws last year. My tax program came out about 2 months before the end of the year, and I started practicing on my own tax return for November and December to get used to the new laws and the way things were affected, and et cetera, but. Most of the time, you get questions, and you say, what? Let me research that, and you research it.
Where do you go to research?
I go Google, and I ask the question, and you get a whole bunch of things popping up, and the volume of information out there is incredible. And you look, and you try to pick out the right things, or you just go to irs.gov, and you read the code, the Internal Revenue Code. So there's a lot of things out there. There's a lot of things. Most of the things that I deal with are not, super earth-shattering.
Not rocket science.
No, and this year I actually came across stuff that I'd never come across before, and I had to do some research into it.
Like what?
Oh, just, people are investing. I think people need to be aware of what they're investing in, because their financial advisors will make these investments in things that, like hedge funds, that get involved in a lot of crazy stuff, and it gets passed through to them individually through what's called a K-1 form, okay, as a partner or a member of an LLC or something like that. And there's stuff on there that if they knew what they were invested in, they'd say, I don't want that. Don't do that.
So shouldn't they talk to you before they invest?
They should, but they don't. They have no idea until after I tell them that's what's happening. In fact, I have a client whose son was a financial advisor, and a few years ago the financial community decided that they could make an investment from partnerships, okay, limited liability companies, partnerships. But what happens in that case, you don't get your dividend statement on January 31st or February 15th anymore. It comes out on a K-1 form, okay, and that wasn't due to come out until April 15th, which is the day that individual taxes do. So people like myself, we went ballistic because we're not getting these things. And people are calling us saying, why isn't my tax return done? Why isn't my tax return done? And I said, because I'm waiting for this K-1. What's a K-1? Why don't you ask your financial advisor? And why don't you tell your financial advisor that you don't want him to invest in any more things that have K-1 forms?
Huh?
And that's what happened in a number of cases. They have people have no idea what's being invested. It's not to say that the financial advisor is not doing good for them. It's just that certain people want their tax returns done early. And if you're going to get a K-1 form, it's not going to get done early. That's all.
No, and that's not right. I would think what keeps a K-1 form from not being reported early.
It's complicated stuff because the accountants like myself, I do K-1 forms for my clients. Okay, I don't have a lot of outside investors, or I don't do hedge funds that have a lot of investors that need K-1 forms. I have some partnerships whose partners I don't do their tax returns. I try to get them done as soon as I can. But when you get into March and you're doing 1040 tax returns, and then you got to do partnership tax returns, it's hard. It's hard, and a lot of times you're missing information. The controller doesn't have information for you. They're waiting for K-1s from other people, so it becomes one of those kind of S shows.
Well, it certainly is obvious that you're the man. When they say you're the man,
I'm the man.
You need to really have people call you and get some help. And you do have a consultation first, and there's no charge,
Absolutely.
Isn't there?
I never charge for the initial
so that's really
consultation.
important to do that. And so, Mark.
And by the way, if I can add,
please.
even that doesn't mean that there are some times when people will come to me for a simple question, and I mean, just reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out. I'm not going to charge you. That I can fix it for them. That it's not going to cost them anything. So don't be afraid.
You're so nice. Mark Morowitz, thank you again for being on our show. And everyone can get on Facebook and see his great face and listen to him speak.
I think the last time you didn't do this on Facebook, and I was a little disappointed. But
I did, but you know what happened? We have to go, but what happened is it wasn't coming through. They got a new little piece of equipment to make it come through. I was very upset
really?
myself.
Hey,
Okay, well now it is, though.
Good.
Now you should be fine. Okay, so we'll see you again another time.
You got it. Thank you.